Now that we've learned how to add information into a table using the command line, we are now going to look at altering information in a table using the command line. All right, so this is a rather large example, but let's step through it. We're going to have a database called screwdrivers.com. So we're making a database for a .com business that sells screwdrivers. It's going to be a very limited database just to get the example going. And let's just see what goes on here. So I have the standard trick from the previous video, drop database if it exists, because, well, we know that I make mistakes and we had to run this a few times. And now we're going to create the database, screwdrivers.com. And then we're going to add a couple of tables in this. So we're going to add a table that keeps track of our inventory. And for the inventory, we're going to have an ID for the screwdriver. That's going to be the primary key and auto incremented. And then we're going to have this type of screwdriver, the size of the screwdriver, the handle color for the screwdriver, and the count for the screwdriver. And then using the insert command, we're going to insert into. Notice that in this case, I didn't issue the command use screwdrivers.com. Instead of doing that, I'm actually using the dot notation. So I'm saying that this is my database, screwdrivers.com, and this is the table I'm going to add. So screwdrivers.com.inventory. And I'm doing that throughout this script. All right, so I'm inserting into the inventory, and I'm going to put into the columns ID, screwdriver, type, size, handle color, and count these values. We have a straight screwdriver or flat blade, size 3 with a green handle, and we have 100 of those. A straight screwdriver, size 2, green, 100 of those. A Phillips, size 3, green, 100, and a Phillips size 2, red, and we only have 50 of those. So limited supply of the reds. That has become a popular color this year. Very Christmassy, green and red. And then we're just going to print out the contents of inventory. So we do a select star from, again, we're using the dot notation from the database and the table. Now we're going to modify then our table. So we're going to modify inventory, and we're going to do this through an update command. So here's the format. We're going to update. Then this is the table. Here's what we're setting. I'm setting handle color equal to red, and I'm setting the count equal to 220. So I'm modifying both things. And now there was a where modifier that tells me, or tells MySQL, which of the things that are in a database we're going to modify. So I'm going to modify all the entries where the type is Phillips and the size is 3. And we're going to make them red with a count of 220. And when we do that, then we are going to print out, again, the contents of inventory. All right, so let's just take a break here from all this code and go ahead and run this thing. So this is called insert2.sql. So again, remember the format. It's mysql.u for the user. I'm going to use root user -p to tell it I want to use a password. And then we're going to pipe in insert2.sql. No idea what insert1 was. There was one. Okay, so here we are. This is the original database. We had some straight screwdrivers and some Phillips screwdrivers, size 3 and size 2. Most of these are green handled, but we had 50 reds. And then all of a sudden we got something in, and now we have a bunch of Phillips screwdrivers of size 3 that are red, and there's 220 of those. All right, so that puts us then up to here. Well, actually to here. And now we're going to create a new table called invoice. We're going to issue invoices to people, and it has an ID invoice that's auto incremented. It's an int. It's the primary key. And for each invoice, we have a name of the person we're going to sell a screwdriver to. This is a screwdriver int, and that turns out to be a foreign key to screwdrivers.com.inventory, the ID screwdriver. So we're going to insert into the invoice, and we're going to put in the ID invoice name screwdriver values. I'm putting in null since that's auto incremented, and Jim Bob is going to get a screwdriver of type 3, Jim Bob's going to get a screwdriver of type 2, and Jill Bob's going to get a screwdriver of type 4. And then we're going to go ahead and print that out, the invoices. So if we come back here and look at what we ran, here it is. Jim Bob has a screwdriver type 3, Jim Bob a screwdriver type 2, and Jill Bob a screwdriver of type 4. And then down here, we're going to do an update again on the inventory. And we're going to use this invoice to help update the inventory. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the count in inventory to count -1 every time we find a screwdriver on an invoice. All right, so we're updating these two inventories, and we're setting the count. We're updating these two tables, not inventories. And we're setting count to be 1 less every time somebody buys a screwdriver. So let's look at what happens here. We had 100, 100, 220, and 50, and we have 100 of these. We sold one of these to, let's see, this was a 2, so we sold that to Jim Bob, and we sold a Phillips to Jim Bob, and we sold a Phillips to Jill Bob. Okay, so again, you can update one table using another, using this idea of update, set, and where. So you can use a where command to give you some kind of condition based on the two different tables. All right, so that is then updating information in the table using the update command. We used update in 2 different ways. We used update here, and we used update here. We use those again in 2 different ways. And this way we updated an existing inventory, and this way we used a table to update another table. So this one we just added some information in here about the count of red. Now, what if we want to change the format of the table? Well, there turns out a way to do that. Yeah, we'll save that. And we're going to look at the alter command. So we're going to use the database screwdrivers.com, and we're going to show the inventory again. All right, so let's run this script. Okay, so here's the inventory. This is from the last time. And now I'm going to update, and I'm going to update the, I'm not going to update. I'm going to alter the table invoice. So invoice had a name and a screwdriver, and that's basically it. And I've decided that for whatever reason I want to add in the color. I'm going to make it a varchar 25, just like it is from inventory. And that's useful because I'm going to update the invoice table using, okay, so I'm going to set the color. So I'm updating the table, and I'm setting the color, or S color, here to from invoice to, and then where am I going to get the colors from? I'm going to get the colors from handle color, which comes from inventory. All right, so let's go back. Oh, I wish I hadn't closed that. Maybe we can get it from here. Yeah, so remember that in inventory we had a handle color. So from inventory I'm getting the handle color, and what I want to do is to check to make sure that the invoice.screwdriver, that's the ID of the screwdriver, is equal to the inventory.id screwdriver. So remember that this is a foreign key in invoice. So I'm checking to see that those two are the same, and when I do that I'm going to update handle color, and I'm only going to do this for Jim Bob. So Jim Bob, I'm going to label all of his handle colors. Okay, so let's go down and look what happens. So we have a new column now, S color. We did not have this before in invoice. Before we just had ID invoice name screwdriver, and now we have ID invoice name screwdriver S color. That comes from, I'll just put these side by side, I guess. Easier, wouldn't it? That comes from this command right here, the alter table, add S color, put this new column in here, and then this update where I'm selecting the handle colors from another table, then goes through and finds all the cases of Jim Bob and updates the colors. So he had a red number 3 and a green number 2. Okay, and then just prints out invoice. That's what we're just looking at. You can alter other things in tables. So if I want to alter the name varchar, that was a varchar 25, but I noticed the longest name I have in there is Jill Bob, and Jill Bob's name only has 8 characters in it, so I can modify that to be 8 characters. So you can modify the type of data structure that you're using to hold your data. You have to be a little bit careful because MySQL is not going to go back and automatically update. So if I change this, I mean, I could put date here, change name to date, but it's not going to go through and change all those names to dates. That's something you'd have to do extra. This one I'm getting away with because, again, the longest name is already a varchar, and I'm just saying I want 8 instead of 25. So that doesn't change anything when I print out from invoice. And then the other thing is we added a column up here, and you can also drop a column. So I'm going to drop the S color column back out and print that out, and that's this. Okay, so things that we have talked about are updating tables, and we've talked about updating data in tables. We've talked about adding columns to tables. We've talked about deleting columns for tables. We've talked about updating column information. I'm sorry, row information just using a single row, and we've talked about updating rows from existing tables.